Deep below boiling mud pools, a tectonic battle is underway. A fiery confrontation fought at temperatures as high as 1,000 degrees Celsius.
The Tarawera event would be 5 to 10 times the size of the Mount St Helens event. Ultimately, you would have been killed if you were this close.
On the surface are the scars of that collision, venerated in myth and ritual. To the people who live around the Pacific Rim, the threat is a constant. The rim is the front line in the subterranean struggle where the Earth as we know it can suddenly change. From New Zealand to Japan, this region is one of the most hazardous on the planet. But with destruction comes creation. High in the southern Alps of New Zealand, we see new land being born and explore the dynamic forces that are reshaping the face of the world we live on. An epic journey along the Pacific Rim with Canadian geologist Professor Nick Isles from the University of Toronto as our guide. New Zealand is a latecomer in the geologic history of our planet. Submerged for much of its history, its scattered islands will one day fill out to form a new continent. But what's the mechanism? What are the forces at play? White Island, a hyperactive volcano on the edge of the rim, just off New Zealand's east coast, provides a ringside view of the convulsive battle between ocean and land.
Like a scene out of Dante's Inferno, isn't it?
It's impressive, isn't it? Come this way.
Like hell. Do you have an idea of how frequent it erupts?
Oh, it's been incredibly active, really. So I imagine on average this is active about every 7 years, something of that order.
This level of activity has made the volcano a living laboratory, where scientists such as Hamish Campbell with GNS Science pay close attention to its fiery inner life.
We monitor volcanoes like this in a number of ways, where we're chemically, seismically, and also we use fancy satellite-based surveying, geodetics.
To see if there's any swelling.
Yeah, to see if there's any sort of movement, if the whole system is inflating or deflating, changing shape. And we're doing that on pretty much a daily basis. And we've got instruments all around the crater.
So what's all this rubble? Is this left over from the last eruption?
Looks very jumbled up, doesn't it? See those blocky lava flows over there?
Its slopes reveal a violent and chaotic past, a jumble of fallen rock and ash.
So you can imagine there might be a really big eruption soon, and this material might actually get either blown completely away or actually capped by fresh lava.
The debris, broken by the sudden shock of an explosive eruption, is referred to as pyroclastic, meaning broken by fire.
All these deposits are pretty much at the angle of repose, and they're at the tipping point. It doesn't take much inflation or
A little earthquake.
and you're in trouble. The stuff will be mobilized and head downstream.
What happened here with this part, the rim has gone out into the ocean.
That's right. This is a classic sector collapse structure. And it's amazing to see. It's rather like Mount St. Helens, pretty much what happened there in 1980, where the whole flank of the mountain just goes.
Which is why these volcanoes are so dangerous, because instead of going up, it's vented sideways.
That's right, yeah. They can, I mean, I actually think of volcanoes as just natural chimneys. They're just a great pile of debris that's spattered out, and they are inherently unstable.
White Island, as with all of New Zealand, sits right on the rim at the junction of the Pacific and Australian plates. It's a collision area where the floor of the Pacific Ocean dives deep below the Australian plate in what is called a subduction zone. The seafloor is buckled and pulled down into deep trenches, and the friction triggers powerful earthquakes as the Pacific plate is slowly consumed. Even here, magma flows from underwater volcanoes as rocks are melted and recycled. White Island is one of a chain of volcanoes that includes the notorious Tarawera.
That was quite a bumpy flight. But it's worth it because we're right on the Pacific Rim there, aren't we?
We are. This is the Pacific Ring of Fire at its best. There aren't many places where you can see it so graphically.
So we're literally walking to the edge of the Australian plate, and right in front of us is the Pacific plate.
Well, not quite going that far. I mean, we really are entirely on the Australian plate here. But this is where we feel the effects of the down-going Pacific plate.
The plate's going down, starting to melt under friction, heat. All the magma's coming back right underneath these aligned volcanoes all the way through here.
That's right. And I'd say there's a volcano probably about every 40 to 60 kilometers all the way up.
Now, we're looking down at some very impressive volcanic ash layers, aren't we?
We are. This is absolutely spectacular. This is a fissure, a rift that's formed as a product of the eruption in 1886 of Mount Tarawera that we're standing on now. And you can actually see it's very revealing. The eruptions literally cut through underlying pyroclastic deposits associated with the penultimate eruption of Mount Tarawera, which was in 1314 AD or thereabouts. So those pale layers, well layered, they're tephra, ash, if you like, that accumulated in that eruption. And then in 1886, this incredible eruption took place. It only lasted about 4 hours, and it produced these dark, bright red, grey, black pyroclastic deposits that we see sitting on top of the white layer. Here we are on the south side of the mountain. Was the eruption very directional?
Which one, Tarawera?
Tarawera eruption.
There was quite a strong southerly blowing, southwesterly blowing, so a lot of the material blew to the north, 600 kilometres.
David Lowe has a particular interest in Tarawera. He's a volcanologist with the University of Waikato.
So what's the furthest away from New Zealand that you can pick up a ash layer in the marine record and say, yeah, that's from New Zealand?
Of any eruption?
Yeah.
Pretty much South America, they reckon. That is very likely to be the case.
Each of these layers records an eruption. By studying the location and depth of ash or tephra, Lowe has constructed a volcanic timeline dating back close to 10,000 years.
If we'd been here during the eruption, looking up at the volcano, what would this have looked like during the progress of that eruption?
Oh, it would have been spectacular and very dangerous. Ultimately, you would have been killed if you're this close.
The 1886 eruption happened around midnight on June 10th. Without warning, the upper part of the volcano exploded, burying the landscape and surrounding villages under a thick blanket of pulverized rock, incinerating everything in its path. The scale of destruction was immense. Whole forests were torn up and burned. More than 100 people died that night. Most of them were Maori. The slopes also provide evidence of the earlier eruption in 1314, some 70 years after New Zealand was first settled by the Maori. Charred tree trunks encased in ash, a stark reminder of the heat and ferocity of the eruption.
The Tarawera eruption coincides approximately with the time of the arrival of the first Polynesian settlers. So anybody living here would have witnessed the eruption. Certainly those on the coast, very sparse, we presume in those early days, they would have seen the eruption and the impact as well.
Maori legends speak of fire gods Ahitipua and how their land was the gift of the ocean. Their rituals venerate the powers of ocean and volcano, the dancers embodying the strength of tectonic forces. The legacy of the most recent Tarawera eruption may be etched in the landscape, but nothing can prepare this region for its future and the enormity of the geologic upheaval it will inevitably one day face. Tarawera lies in the epicenter of an ancient crater or caldera, some 30 kilometers across, formed by the massive explosion of a supervolcano. The eruption left a vast pit that is now dotted with lakes and other smaller stratovolcanoes. Similarly, the tranquil waters of nearby Lake Taupo hide the scars of another super-scale event. The eruption, the largest on the planet in the last 70,000 years, buried the entire North Island under 200 meters of ash. Dramatic as they are, volcanoes are not the only threat. New Zealanders live with another deadly tectonic force: earthquakes. The picturesque landscape conceals a seismic grid, a network of hidden faults. New Zealand's capital city, Wellington, is especially at risk. It's built on a tectonic intersection where the Australian plate heads north and Pacific plate drives south. Most of the time, the plates are locked, but when the accumulated stress forces them to uncouple, the Australian plate rides up, triggering an earthquake, tearing the landscape and the city with it.
I reckon this scarp must represent 2 or 3 movements on the Wellington Fault. And we're literally walking along the fault itself, or the eroded scarp. Well, it looks innocuous enough, but this really is a crime scene. This is the site of crustal collision at work. So here we are on this surface, and what's happening is that this side is literally being ramped up over that side as a function of plate collision.
This is an excellent place for a lesson in plate tectonics, isn't it?
Oh, it is. You can see all the action you want here. Yep, you can see the Wellington Fault down here running parallel to the harbour, and it runs up this gully here and off down into Cook Strait.
During the 1855 earthquake, the plates slipped 15 meters in a matter of seconds and triggered landslides along the shore. There was much damage, but few injuries. Since that time, there have been many reminders of the pressure below. The most telling was the earthquake of 1942, which demolished nearly every chimney in the city.
So this is New Zealand's San Andreas Fault, isn't it?
It is. Yeah, it is. Exactly, in the sense that it's running through a major city. And this, well, to make matters worse, this is a capital city.
So looking into your crystal ball, when is the next major earthquake here?
I've got an easy answer for that. It's, let's see, there's a 10% chance of something happening within the next 100 years. That's mumbo jumbo in a sense, but nevertheless, that's the best probability we can provide, and that's the only way we can really express things scientifically with any certainty. Having said that, there could be a major earthquake tomorrow in Wellington.
But the same destructive process that Wellingtonians fear is also creating new land. Each earthquake pushes rocks from the ocean bed high above sea level. The shoreline of North Island is a unique laboratory for the study of how continents grow, where geologists can see the process of accretion at work. These rocks, called greywacke, once lay deep underwater. Red rocks is especially interesting to geologists because there's also a clear chronology. It's a geologic time machine.
So this is a really superb example, isn't it? What were formerly deep marine rocks being scraped off the descending Pacific plate and now exposed above sea level.
All this material has been accreted on to the margin. So we're on rocks of Triassic age here, Jurassic over there, Cretaceous beyond, and Cenozoic beyond that, and it's still happening.
So what have you got?
Really good greywacke.
Any fossils?
No, no fossils here, but we have found fossils in this immediate vicinity.
Greywacke is a young rock, its youth symbolizing both a country and its recent oceanic origin, a country snatched, as the Maori legend goes, from the depths of the sea. Traveling northwest, Isle's journey next takes him to a country where the size of population raises the stakes. Japan is one of the most urbanized countries on the planet, but despite the stability of its infrastructure and way of life, there is a constant threat of seismic upheaval. Its citizens know that earthquakes will happen. Only the time and place are unknown. People think back to the Great Kanto earthquake that decimated Tokyo in 1923, killing more than 142,000 people. The event is commemorated every year on September 1st, when Japanese emergency services stage earthquake preparedness drills. Cities like Fukuroi will, for a few hours, attempt to simulate the chaotic aftermath of an earthquake and rehearse their reactions. Japan sits at the epicenter of a huge subduction zone, the result of a 4-plate pileup. Offshore, deep in the Japan or Nankai Trough, the Pacific and Philippine plates are being pushed under the edge of the Eurasian and North American. As so often around the rim, there's a deadly rhythm at play as the plates lock, buckle, and break. Fukuroi, in the Shizuoka region, has the grim distinction of being graded the highest risk. Statisticians who have studied the frequency and location of earthquakes in Shizuoka have determined that Fukuroi's next trauma is imminent. Nothing can be done to quell the force that will hit this quiet town. But those who live here know that they can at least plan for the event, however unwelcome. And then, on the stroke of 10, the drill begins. Young people take an active role. The experience of earlier earthquakes suggests they are often the quickest to react. As the helicopters return and the mock wounded are winched to safety, the memories of some track back to earlier times when events such as this weren't a rehearsal. Back in 1944, when the last earthquake hit Fukuroi, many of the victims were children. The local school was destroyed, children buried in the debris. The new school buildings are specially braced to reduce the risk of collapse. Japan was at war at that time, and many of the local people mistakenly thought there was an air raid.
You all survived the terrible earthquake of December the 7th, 1944. I wonder, in these tranquil surroundings, if you could just walk us through the experiences that you had on that terrible day.
She was in a one-story building, and she heard people on the roof shouting, "If you are there, if you've survived, just sing a song." Then they started digging through the roof where they could hear the children singing. She thinks she was one of the last rescued, because where she got out of the building, she saw many bodies and many injured children lying in the schoolyard. It was like when you see houses collapsing. Friends dead, parents holding dead children, neighbors crying, looking for missing children, trying to find them. When you have been exposed to things you don't experience in your regular day, how should I describe it? It was a shock. There's one thing that I will never forget. The child who was sitting beside me in class was dead in the doorway. The memory of that scene never goes away. The neck was caught between two pillars. And that's the thing that hit me especially hard, because that child had been sitting right beside me. If I force myself to think, that's the scene that comes to my mind.
Japan must also face the potential threat of volcanoes. 4,000 meters above sea level, Mount Fuji is a national icon, but it's also a towering menace to the city that lies in its shadow. Fuji Yoshida is home to nearly 50,000 people and is part of a wider urban area of 750,000. To geologists like Isles, the volcano and its setting raise many questions. The town itself sits on a bed of lava, the result of the eruption of 1707. Travelers come from all across Japan to worship the mountain and also to visit one of its most famous shrines, the Fuji Sengen. The shrine is dedicated to the volcano's goddess and is the setting of the Fuji Festival of Fire, where in a 2-day celebration, giant torches are lit in her honor. Rich in myth and legend, the volcano's geologic behavior was once thought predictable, but new information suggests differently. Volcanologist Professor Shigeo Aramaki is the head of a special task force that was set up in 2002.
You've been up here many, many times.
Right.
What's special about this place?
Well, actually, we Japanese volcanologists in the past, we reckoned ahead. Mount Fuji is so simple shaped and probably very simply constructed and nothing interesting as compared with other rather complicated shaped volcanoes in Japan. But, well, it was not so. We found out the Fuji has shown very interesting various features of volcanic activity, including pyroclastic flows, sector collapse, sudden lava flows, and Plinian explosions and whatnot. So this is really a showplace of the volcanic phenomena.
The potential threat is commemorated every year in an elaborate ceremony. The goddess of the mountain is taken from her resting place at the shrine, along with a replica of the volcano. The heavy statues, weighing more than a ton, are carried from the temple and paraded through the streets of Fuji Yoshida. The ceremony dates back many centuries, reflecting the Shinto reverence for the natural world. On her journey, the goddess is honored and appeased by the city and its people. If she remains content, the city will be spared a volcanic eruption. When the procession reaches the center of the city, the celebrations begin.
Most of the Japanese people never experience in person the real eruption because the frequency of the eruption is so low as compared with other kinds of natural disasters, even earthquakes. The medium-sized earthquakes you can experience, but or the typhoons, torrential rainfalls and whatnot, they come every year.
Meanwhile, in Fuji Yoshida, the festival goes on. The giant torches are lifted, and all across the city, fires are lit in honor of the gods. And Fuji Yoshida becomes a city of fire. Despite the apparent risks of living so close to the volcano, many local people remain unperturbed. preferring to see Mount Fuji as their guardian. Yayoi Sato has lived in Fuji Yoshida for most of her life.
So it's a celebration of fire, it's a celebration of the volcano. But the volcano is a dangerous thing. Are you ever scared about living on the slopes of a volcano?
It's nothing. I'm not scared at all.
Now, what about earthquakes? Do you ever experience earthquakes in Fuji Yoshida?
Yes, I have experienced it, but it was nothing much. You see, I was born in 1923 during the Kanto earthquake. My parents put me to sleep on the second floor of the house. They were eating lunch on the first floor. When it started, they ran out and forgot they had a baby. But my father remembered. And when he came back to get me, I was smiling because of all the rocking.
Geologists know that Fuji will one day erupt again. But on festival day in Fuji Yoshida, that seems a very distant prospect. The more mountainous interior also bears the scars of past events. The quiet village of Motosu City exposes the workings of a killer fault.
This idyllic rural setting is actually one of the most dangerous parts of Japan because it lies between two large tectonic plates. And in 1891, the fault that runs through this area ruptured during a large earthquake, producing the fault scarp that you can see just behind me. And the block here dropped suddenly within a few seconds by 6 meters, and 7,000 people were killed as a result. Faults are pretty common in the world, but it's really unique to get one exposed like this. This is largely because it's a memorial to people that were killed. We can see the whole nature of the offset. That surface up there is the same surface we have down there, and there's been about 6 meters of vertical displacement, and that happened instantaneously during the 1891 earthquake. And here we have relatively young sediments which are juxtaposed against old rock. And I'm looking right along the fault plane along which that earthquake happened. And the boulders have been turned up along that surface. And this whole rock behind me has been pulverized and crushed by that movement.
Thanks to the development of plate tectonic theory in the 1960s, geologists have a clear understanding of the cause of earthquakes. But there are still many unanswered questions surrounding both the mechanism and the timing. Scientists know why earthquakes happen. They are less sure about when. Here in the Nankai Trough, one of the most earthquake-prone regions around the rim, scientists on board the drill ship Chikyu are drilling kilometers into the ocean bed as they attempt to unravel the processes at work in subduction zones. They're hunting for telltale indicators that precede a major quake, and they hope to find them deep under the ocean floor.
In the on-land geology here in Japan, we can go back and see analogous types of geologic formations that are 50 million years old, 80 million years old, 100 million years old, and they're very important in understanding how the system has evolved over long periods of time, but they don't help very much in terms of understanding the processes leading up to the next earthquake. For that, we need to go into the active fault zones. We need to go offshore where we can access the fault.
The Chikyu is one of the world's most advanced drill ships, capable of reaching depths of 7,000 meters below the sea floor. The process is highly automated and uses gigantic robotic arms to maneuver the heavy piping. And a satellite navigation system to help prevent sudden shifts in positioning prompted by currents or weather. This expedition is exploring a segment of the plate boundary that ruptured in an earthquake in 1943. GPS data confirm that it's still locked and will at some point rupture yet again, threatening the greater Tokyo area and the 23 million people who live there. The clues lie in subducting sediments. In the ship's lab, scientists analyze samples extracted from the core so that they can gauge the effect of pressure and temperature. By determining the changes in fluid chemistry leading up to a major earthquake, the scientists hope to capture the seismic process in action. Phase 2 of the Chikyu project is especially ambitious. The scientists aim to install a borehole observation system that will link a battery of sensors embedded in the fault line to a shore-based observatory. The sensors will continually monitor the Earth's crustal movement and provide real-time data on shifts in temperature and pressure. The international team hopes to deploy the system in 2011. Should it live up to the visionary objectives of its key scientists, it could one day revolutionize earthquake science. Volcanoes have a mystical allure, impressing with their scale and presence. Mount Unzen volcano on the southwest coast of Japan overlooks Shimabara City. Like Fuji Yoshida, it's a tourist resort and vacation destination. It's also a working port. Ariake Bay may seem tranquil today, but its picturesque, scattered islands tell a different story. Unzen is the most infamous volcano in Japan. Its contours tell of its past, and the early warning monitoring system its future. Each slope, every outcrop, is a harbinger of events to come. The most deadly was on the night of May 21st, 1792, and it was caused not by a volcanic eruption, but by an earthquake. Illustrations from the time depict how the eastern slopes of Mount Unzen collapsed. Enormous blocks of rock and ash swept down slope into the shallow waters of Ariake Bay, triggering a tsunami and forming the many islands that dot the bay. 15,000 people were killed that day, mostly from the impact of the tsunami. The scars of seismic activity are everywhere. This gash documents the path of another pyroclastic flow. Even the dome is expanding as more lava is pushed up from the magma chamber deep inside. Bubbling mud and venting steam are surface clues to the pressures below. Mount Unzen is still active. And despite all of the sophistication of surveillance and preparedness drills, is unpredictable. After almost 2 centuries of inactivity, on June 5th, 1991, Mount Unzen erupted again. Three people were killed, including 3 volcanologists and an NHK cameraman.
It's quite humbling sitting here when you realize the power of the 1991 event. When you see photographs of that event, of this fiery cloud sweeping down valley. These are so dangerous because they're so unpredictable. And for weeks prior to that event, there'd been swarms of small earthquakes recording the ascent of magma in the volcano, so it was known that an eruption was imminent. But what caught everybody by surprise was that the upper slope of the volcano suddenly dramatically collapsed.
Ash clouds, unimpeded by the lay of the land, tore straight down the side of the mountain. Scientists estimate that the flow was traveling at 100 kilometers an hour and that temperatures reached 450 degrees Celsius. Pyroclastic flows follow the contours of the land. Here at Unzen, the trail of that flow is clearly marked. Giant boulders thrown from the summit litter the slopes. A scale and ferocity difficult to imagine. The trail of destruction was 4.5 kilometers long. It took 4 years of subsequent flows and small eruptions before the volcano's force subsided again. The damage was compounded further when the eruption triggered a series of mudslides called lahars that buried the town. The local school, which was sited right at the base of the volcano and directly in the path of the pyroclastic flow, was particularly badly hit and is now a monument to those who lost their lives. The tectonic forces that are continually reshaping our planet can destroy, but they also create. On the last stop on Nick Isle's journey around the western rim of the Pacific, he heads back to New Zealand, but this time to the South Island to explore this process at work on a massive scale. As always in geology, it's the landscape that tells the story. There were no rivers on this scale on the North Island. So why are they here? And what do they bring? To find out, Nick meets with geologist and New Zealand prospector John Youngson.
Very steep. Huge bowl.
Further inland, there are ice-covered mountains, sediment-laden rivers, and deep, cold lakes. The Alps are the epicenter of a titanic battle where glaciers tear down what tectonics constructs.
So John, when were you last here?
Well, over 20 years ago, back in the days when I ran around these mountains doing quite a bit of climbing.
So how do you read that landscape in terms of the processes that are at work?
Yeah, oh, it's fantastic here, Nick. This is plate tectonics at work. We can actually see into the engine room, if you like, of the collision zone between the Pacific plate here and just over the ridge, over the main divide, we've got the Australian plate. And we're in a sea of greywacke. This is the medium that we're so familiar with in New Zealand. And it's literally been pushed up, and the maximum rate of uplift is about 10 millimeters a year. Doesn't seem much, but over millions of years, that amounts to a huge amount of uplift.
Now you talk about strong uplift. What are the processes that are acting to tear down the mountains?
Well, it's mainly this process, isn't it, John?
Yes.
The glacier.
The glacier here is essentially just a conveyor. It is a very efficient transporter of all of this rock that is eroded from the mountains. It carries it down the valley as effectively as a conveyor, and then the meltwater from the ice distributes that sediment further downstream down the valleys beyond the snout of the glacier.
So gravity's tearing down the mountains and the glacier is evacuating all the debris.
Yes, it's an ongoing process, a dynamic equilibrium process where the mountains are being uplifted and they're being torn down at the same time. We're standing right on a collision zone. What happens to the rocks that are being pushed towards us?
Well, they get metamorphosed. So they're getting squished, squashed. The rocks are literally recrystallized, and in the process, they reorganize themselves and produce lovely new flat minerals and release fluids.
So they're cooked?
They're cooked.
Those fluids are very important because as they migrate through the crust, down beneath the Alps, they dissolve metals and they carry those metals to the surface, and among those is gold. So there's a lot of gold that has come out of the western side of the Alps, and a lot of gold that's been mined down on the rivers and the plains on the western side on the Australian plate.
The rivers are the final link on a geologic conveyor that transforms and shapes the South Island landscape. The fast-flowing waters act as a gold machine, sifting treasure from chaff.
The river's very good at sorting the light minerals from the heavy minerals, so we just copy the same processes. Oh, there we go. There's some gold in there.
The machine has worked.
The journey around the western rim of the Pacific is one of birth and destruction. White Island, a young volcano, emerges from the seafloor. Red rocks see new land created by seismic action that elevates land from sea. High on Mount Cook lies rock that originated on the ocean floor. As the bed of the Pacific Ocean sinks below the advancing continents, its rocks are melted and recycled. The ocean shrinks and new land is created. The birth of a continent comes at a price.